Good morning. My name is Donna Marie Collins. I'm the hearing examiner that will be presiding over this morning's zoning hearing. We have before us a request to amend an existing RPD CPD. The focus is going to be on the RPD north of Diplomat Parkway. All testimony and evidence I accept during these hearings must be taken in under oath. Therefore, I will administer the oath to everyone in the room that intends on speaking on the record at the conclusion of my remarks. Do we have members of the public here? Yes. All right, for those of you who may not be familiar with our process, the property owner, applicant's representatives will present the request. They will explain the details of the request, and they will go through the county regulations and explain how the request is consistent with the county's land development regulations. They may have more than one witness. Sometimes we have expert witnesses testify on specific issues such as transportation, environment, what have you. Following their presentation, we will go to the county planner who prepared the staff report. The staff report in this case recommends approval. The county planner will go over the basis of their recommendation, and at the conclusion of their presentation, I will open up the hearing to members of the public. At that time, I will call the names on the sheets that have been filled out here one at a time. I ask that you come to the podium, state your full name. If you live or work in relationship to the project, we will have an aerial of the general area up on the screen, and you can show us where you live or work and share with us your comments, favorable or opposed. Many times I find members of the public are not completely in favor or totally against a request. They have very specific concerns. I urge you to share those concerns with us because you give us an opportunity to clarify something you may not have understood or craft a condition to address those concerns. This decision is not final with me. This is the first of 2 hearings. However, if you would like the opportunity to address the Board of County Commissioners at the final hearing, you must participate by putting remarks on the record at this level. You may speak as long as you wish, but once you take your seat, you may not come back. There's no calling out from the audience. I ask you to please, during the presentation, to organize your thoughts so that you don't leave anything out when you do want to speak. And while you may speak as long as you wish at this hearing, you will be limited to only 3 minutes at the final Board of County Commissioner hearings. So it'll be important for you to really focus on what matters to you most when you address them, because you only have 3 minutes. All right, I'm ready to administer the oath. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony and evidence you enter into the record will be the truth?
I do.
Thank you. I'm ready to begin.
Will we need a legal pad or a pad of paper? Good morning, Madam Hearing Examiner. I do have a couple of items I'd like to submit into the record. I have the applicant's PowerPoint, as well as a composite exhibit with a cover letter.
And what does that pertain to?
This has the revised conditions.
Okay.
That codifies all the way back to the original zoning resolution with the proposed changes in clean and coded version. And then it's also a revised master concept plan.
Okay.
To clarify, the first page being the overall RPD, CPD, and also updating some discrepancies that were discovered in the open space table that I'll go through during.
Okay,
the
very good.
presentation.
And
And it also has a copy of a referenced approved development order just for the indigenous, and updated resumes. My 48-hour notice was a little incorrect on the resumes on file.
okay, that's it? Those 2 exhibits?
Yes, this and the PowerPoint. And here's a copy of both for you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
right, I'm ready when you are.
All right. My name's Stacy Ellis Hewitt. I'm the planner on the case. I've previously been accepted as an expert witness in land use planning and zoning matters and the Lee Plan and Land Development Code, and I request to be accepted as such today.
Please proceed.
Thank you. With me today, I also have Christian Casey on environmental with Atwell, Sam Marshall, the engineer with Atwell, and Ted Treesh with TR Transportation. The site is located on the north side of Diplomat Parkway East. The subject of the request is approximately 38.13 acres. It's outlined in red on the map. It's approximately 0.31 mile west of the intersection with North Cleveland Avenue, US 41. The applicant for the case is Diplomat Fort Myers LLC. It is within the North Fort Myers Community Planning Area. And the request is an amendment to approximately 38.13 acres of the Diplomat North RPD CPD from the zoning resolution Z11-002/ADD 2019-00085 approvals to replace 238 dwelling units or 138 dwelling units and 400 assisting living facility units and 50,000 square feet of commercial with a maximum height of 50 feet to allow 360 multifamily dwelling units with amenities with a maximum height of 60 feet within the mixed-use overlay. The site and the surrounding properties are all within the Central Urban Future Land Use designation, which has a standard density of up to 10 dwelling units per acre and can go up to 20 dwelling units per acre utilizing bonus density. This is the urban core of the county. This map designates the mixed-use overlay for the area, which allows incentives including density utilized from commercial parcels, allows heights up to 135 feet, reduced property development regulations, reduced parking, and reduced buffers. We're proposing to utilize the yellow outline on this parcel is the actual development parcel, which is 35.18 acres, and we're also utilizing 2.95 acres of commercial parcels 1 and 2, which are on the east and west sides of the entrance. That's where we get the total of 38.13 acres for the request. Now, the request could request with this acreage up to 381 dwelling units with standard density, or up to 763 dwelling units total maximum with bonus density and Greater Pine Island transfer development units. The request, however, is for 360 dwelling units with a maximum height of 60 feet.
So you're within standard density ranges?
Correct. So no bonus density. Bonus density could be requested in this area, but it's not included with the request. To the north, we have the Serendipity Mobile Home Park, which is zoned MH2, and their storage area in the northwest, which is zoned AG2. To the west, we have a 25-foot drainage ditch, and that's zoned AG2, and then the Six Lakes Country Club Mobile Home Park, which is zoned MH2. And their common elements actually have approximately 58 feet between the subject property and their individual lots. To the south is Diplomat Parkway, and then the vacant lands within the subject RPD and CPD. And to the east, we have the Mevo North Fort Myers residential plan development, 285 dwelling units with 60-foot height, and it's got a current development order, DOS 2022-00141, which is under review.
All right, now the project, the rest of this project is south of Diplomat. Well, I know there's a couple more commercial parcels north, but south of Diplomat, I don't know how old that aerial is, but there is ongoing development on that parcel right now. Is that correct? Are you covering that in a later part of your presentation?
There is an approved development order on the south, but nothing is being developed that I'm aware of right now within our property or within the subject RPD, CPD.
Okay, so the multifamily project that's underway, that's part of the Merchants Crossing project and not part of this RPD, CPD?
I'm not certain where exactly that is happening, if there's something under construction.
If I could jump in on that.
Yes,
the
please.
multifamily project that's under construction associated with Merchants Crossing is wholly within the Merchants Crossing CPD.
When I did my site visit, I noticed that there was development activity south of Diplomat, and I was wondering if that was part of this project or,
I don't believe that there's been anything. We can confirm that.
because this is really the CPD section of the project, right, to the south
To
mainly?
the south, there's a residential tract and a commercial tract, similar to the way the north is.
Okay. Proceed.
Thank you. The staff report does recommend approval. The applicant's in agreement with the staff report recommendation and the conditions and deviations as revised with the submittal today. And I do request to incorporate the staff report and the applicant's submittals as part of my testimony today. The staff report outlines the existing public services and facilities within the area in quite detail. I have included them here as well. As indicated by being included in the mixed use overlay, there is a plethora of urban services available for the request. This is a map depicting the overall residential plan development in CPD zoning. The overall is 65.13 acres north and south of Diplomat. It was originally rezoned by Z06004, which granted approval for 457 dwelling units, 200,000 square feet of commercial, of which 100,000 could be retail, and 120 hotel rooms. This was amended by Z11002, which amended the north 35.18 acre RPD to allow a maximum of 400 assisted living facility beds, 138 standard dwelling units, and also created this 5.43 acre north CPD with a maximum of 50,000 square feet of commercial. Also had a conversion table and amended the master concept plan. As we'll discuss with the submittal, there were some discrepancies in that zoning resolution. The CPD zone legal description was not included, so there was some discrepancies between the applicant and staff on the existence of this commercial plan development, but it is on the zoning map. There is a legal description in the zoning file, but this request proposes to utilize that CPD for multifamily.
Okay, so I want to make sure the legal description that's attached to this resolution includes the entire legal description of the RPD you seek to amend and the remainder of the overall RPD CPD. Because this is going to be a codified zoning resolution that will address development entitlements on the entire project. And it will remain named as it is.
Right.
But this parcel, you can call this parcel whatever you want. So having said that, I want to go back to this map represents the 2011 approval. So under this request, this 5.43 acre CPD is going to be RPD now. Is that correct?
That's what the applicant was seeking.
Okay.
But there was the mixed use overlay and commercial allows residential, and the request wasn't filed as a rezoning of the CPD. The request language didn't specify that. Neither did the Z11002, but that was the intent of the applicant. We have no, I'm fine either way.
Well, I'm very unclear on what the master concept plan is including. And if it is including this North CPD, it should be RPD if it's going to be. I mean, basically you have a lot of flexibility, but it's very difficult to kind of encapsulate the development entitlements when the master concept plan doesn't seem to match what you're seeking?
We did add that CPD zoning line.
Because it looks like it's included in your MCP.
It is, because, again, the applicant's intent was to revert it back to RPD, but
So why can't we do that? Does it change the acreage?
No, if I can jump in on this, the reason why is historically, since I've been working with these mixture of RPD, CPDs, when the boundary of one of those types of projects changes, we've been requiring a rezoning because they are discrete legal descriptions for two different.
So isn't that
zoning
what we're
districts.
doing? We're amending the zoning approvals?
We are amending it. We are not doing we didn't go through this as a full rezoning for the property. And so it was staff's opinion to keep keep that CPD as a CPD, allow it to operate with multifamily uses as CPDs are allowed to have, with retaining for the remaining acreage of the CPD to have 200,000 square feet, because the Land Development Code does allow for CPDs with more than 50,000 square feet to allow multifamily uses as well.
Okay, just for the record, legally, if you're amending a zoning approval, you're rezoning it.
Okay.
So you could change that to RPD.
Okay.
You don't have to, because you can develop what you want, it appears from staff, but this is an unclean way to approach the development entitlements of this property, I think. It's not streamlined.
And if I may, the attachment to the Z11 already has this described as an RPD, and I have that with me that I could submit into the record, and we wouldn't have to do an amended legal description if it's chosen to go that route.
Wait, just so that I understand though, you're including the North RPD, the North 5.43 acre CPD, and the acreage of parcels 1 and 2 for the purposes of calculating your density, because of you're in the mixed use overlay.
Correct.
But parcels 1 and 2 are going to remain for commercial use. Okay, proceed.
Thank you. There have been multiple administrative amendments since the Z11-002, which are outlined in the staff report and attachments and have been codified throughout the amended conditions. This is the existing master concept plan option that had the assisted living facility with the commercial CPD as well. They're part of that zoning resolution because there is an existing development order on the other existing master concept plan. Development orders are existing and valid until 2030 based on this master concept plan, which was from the 2007-00169.
Are we focusing north or south of Diplomat at this point?
This is the overall. This is the overall, has the CPD parcels. This has the overall plan development. And this is in the existing zoning resolution, and it is proposed to continue to be included, again, because there are development orders issued based off of this master concept plan.
So then the master concept plan that you're proposing today is an alternate?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Now, the north is has development order approval DOS 2007-00255, which is valid until February of 2030. And then the south RPD has a development order DOS 2007-00267, which is valid until February of 2030. Part of the reasoning for the alternate master concept plans is because there's bifurcated ownership on this parcel now. The commercial parcels right now, these two are owned by the same individual, but the three commercial parcels, 2 on the north and the 1 on the south, have separate ownership. And those are not owned by the same as the RPD either. So coming in with a new master concept plan with other people's property that aren't authorized, it's been a little, there's been some attention there to not touch their property or cause anything that would affect their property. This is, excuse the red line, but in the late notice with the revisions, we found this is the existing open space table and indigenous as it's approved by the development order for the south parcel, which is more current than the open space table and delineations of the indigenous that are on the existing ADD 2007-00169.
All right, let's go back.
Yep.
Show me that. What's that from?
This is
That's from the development order.
correct, but it's a basis because of the ADD that happened in 2007 had indigenous calculations and an open space table that had some inconsistencies with the code. And then rather than carrying that forward, we've updated that to, and this is just for record to show exactly what we're changing, to update it to reflect the more current open space table and indigenous that's on the existing approval for the South Development Order. It just puts credits with the uplands. The original one had credits on wetlands, which isn't allowed per the code, and it clarifies that rather than carrying that forward.
Okay, and this is all consistent with the code now, these
Yes.
changes?
Yes, and this is included mostly for your record. When you see the new open space table, I did not want to have strike-through under threes on the master concept plan.
So the master concept plan is a clean version of these corrections.
Correct, but this is just for the record to show exactly what's changed and where that came from.
Okay.
This is the proposed master concept plan, which we've put as page 1 because it remains as required by code, the overall RPD CPD master concept plan.
But it's considered alternate 1 at this point?
I guess this
You're
is,
telling me I have to retain the old one?
yes, so I suppose it would be alternate 1. This is the overall master concept plan is what we've referred to
My
it
question
as.
is, why doesn't this supersede the prior one? Doesn't matter that there's a DO under the old format. They can't, once you amend this, they can't proceed under the old development order. They have to either amend it or replace it.
If the property, the applicant does not own the property owner has those entitlements. So we are going through this process, and when the new applicant, if they obtain a development order, they would rescind that old development order.
So
So,
there's the applicant's a contract purchaser?
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. This is now page 2 of the master concept plan, which is what the subject request is about today. It's really, the development would be a simple request if there wasn't such an extensive history on the approvals. But what we're proposing is 360 multifamily dwelling units. We are within the mixed use overlay, so we're amending the property development regulations to match those which are required within the mixed use overlay. And although open space is half of the requirement, this development is going to result in actually more than what's required today. So they're really providing the original approval allowed all of the indigenous preserve to be included in the South development order, and we're proposing to have an on-site indigenous preserve with credits in the western boundary within the floodway, and we're also proposing to do a phased portion of the South indigenous preserve while leaving the originally allocated preserve amount. So the total would have been on the existing development order 12.17 acres with credits. And once you include our 0.55 acre indigenous preserve, which is 0.61 acres with credits, we end up with a total for the entire RPD CPD of 12.78 acres with credits for the preserve. For this site, it would have only required 3.52 acres under the mixed use overlay, and we're providing 7.68 acres. So,
Including the parcel to the south.
correct, the
When you
phase.
say you're including the parcel to the south, you mean as part of the development approval, this property owner will have the responsibility of restoring this segment down here?
Yes, as working with staff, it was determined and is in one of the conditions, which is on the master concept plan as well, that a 2.92 acre credit phased portion of the Upland Indigenous Preserve on the South RPD parcel will be provided before certification of completion of the development order for this parcel.
What does that mean, though? What's going to happen on those 2 acres?
Those two that we're going to have to go in and do the
Remove
indigenous,
exotics.
remove exotics, and whatever the indigenous management plan comes up with, we're gonna have to do our portion of that preserve and do an amendment to the development order as part of ours.
And then when the other parcels within the RPD, CPD come in, they'll address the remaining areas?
That's correct. Now, a couple of notes that I just would like to make as far as the existing versus the existing approval and development orders with the proposed. While we're increasing the height by 10 feet and we are increasing the density, we've really pulled the site farther away from the boundaries. So the existing setbacks are increased from the north, along the north property line. There is a 20-foot drainage easement, and then we are continuing to provide a 30-foot enhanced buffer that was originally required with the development. And then along the northeast, we are providing a 10-foot buffer. Now, in this area, because of the mixed-use overlay, there's no buffer required, but we're continuing to provide those enhancements to be good neighbors.
Is the project proposing to use any of the site development standards applicable to the mixed-use overlay?
We are updating our property development regulations to allow them to have that, but right now we exceed them.
So when they come in for development order, can they possibly provide none?
It has to be consistent with the master concept plan, but the development order would basically say the requirement is none, but we're providing exceeding it. And then we have the request is consistent with what the mixed use overlay column in the code, in the land development code is. We mirrored that for our request, so it's per the land development code.
But when you say that, you mean that with regard to internal setback, building setbacks and things like that. You're not talking about the perimeter, because your testimony was the perimeter exceeds that.
Correct. Well, we have to be consistent with the master concept plan.
So do your property development regulations reflect this master concept plan, or are they reflecting the mixed-use overlay?
The mixed use overlay.
Well, I find that very confusing then. That tells me the master concept plan could be developed consistent with the property development regulations. Because you have now a conflict. The master concept plan does not match the property development regulations, but those are listed as minimums.
Then, in that case, we do have the buffering requirements, which are still cannot be
And
encroached
they're
upon.
incorporated into the conditions.
That's correct.
Okay.
So nothing can go closer than the 30-foot enhanced buffer that's along the north property line, which then has an additional 20-foot drainage easement. So there's 50-foot separation there, even if from the buildings, that's in where we've got development. Up in the northeast, we have a 10-foot buffer, but it's, again, adjacent to a 20-foot drainage easement. And there's no,
So really, the
buildings
property
there.
development regulations are not the guiding force. It's the conditions and the master concept plan. And if the property development regulations mirror what's permitted in the land development code, you're just gonna reference the land development code there per LDC and not put in actual dimensions.
there could be an per LDC mixed use, so the plan.
Do you see how this creates a problem when we're going to development order stage because you have conflicting documents?
I understand what you're saying. If we couldn't reference the LDC because that's referencing a conventional zoned district.
Correct, thank you.
There's no relief to 0 feet in the mixed use overlay for CPDs just by right. It's not uncommon for the property development regulations to be less than what's shown on a master concept plan.
Okay.
I think if there's concern over that northern boundary, I don't think either of us would have a problem including an additional setback for that northern boundary that would
Correct.
that would provide some of or to reduce some of the concern that you have, at least on that northern.
Right, because if we're gonna celebrate the fact that they're providing this, and this is an enhancement to compatibility, which is an issue because you're adjacent to, existing development, even though you really shouldn't have to buffer residential to residential, but if we're gonna celebrate the fact that you're providing it, then it should be incorporated into a condition, so we can point to conditions of approval require this enhancement, which further makes the project compatible with adjacent development, even though it's residential. It's different in character, mitigates some of the height differential or what have you, But without a condition, that becomes too nebulous, in my opinion. I mean, to amend a master concept plan to make it consistent with the property development regulations wouldn't require a public hearing. So we go in thinking that we're having these enhancements, but at the end of the day, they don't have to be provided or can be changed administratively without hearing.
Condition 23 is where the buffer requirements are included for this enhanced type F buffer along the north property line west of the lake. This is condition 23B. As shown on the master concept plan, the buffer will be 30 feet in wide and include 10 native canopy trees per 100 linear feet and a double hedgerow planted at 48 inches in height at the time of planting.
Very good, thank you.
And while we're on the subject, on the western property, since the original approval, portion of the property is now within a FEMA floodway, and condition 23A requires that the development plans must demonstrate the preservation of native vegetation within the floodway, which will provide the buffer for that.
And that's represented by the hashed lines, the confines of the
Yes.
floodway?
Yes.
I see, thank you. So you're basically staying out of that area and setting it aside for preservation?
Yes, there's only, the only reason that the preserve is not the entire floodway was because of the flux code. The south of the what's included in the indigenous preserve qualified as existing native indigenous.
Based on its flux code?
Correct.
And then outside of that, it still appears that it's open space, right? Because there's some separation before you get to the garage and the parking area, it seems.
Yes, but the property, to your point, the property development regulations don't require that. So, but yes, right now the master concept plan shows that. But the compatibility to the north and to the west are included in the required condition 23A and B, which both exceed the requirements of the mixed use overlay.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is just a closer up view of the development. Let's see. There is also approved by ADD 2019-00181, a master concept plan that provided an alternate for the south RPD. This was filed and adopted. It just shows an alternate to the existing townhomes on the that are on the existing master concept plan for the overall, because the use is allowed, single family, duplex, two family, this just provided an alternate to show that those other uses are allowed. The conditions codify all previous approvals. They remove the commercial uses from the north 5.43 acre north CPD and establish the 360 multifamily dwelling units with the increase of 10 feet in height. Removes assisted living facility uses, dwelling unit types except for multifamily and townhomes, and applies mixed use overlay incentives. The open space, again, as I went over earlier, we are exceeding those requirements.
And we're going to continue to look at the project as a whole, north and south of Diplomat, for the purposes of indigenous and open space requirements.
That's correct. There are several existing deviations that are continuing along with the development. We are requesting amendment of 2 deviations, deviations 7 and 8. Deviation 7 originally approved curbside pickup for the townhome development, and we are requesting to allow a reduction in the amount of required space because we do have a compactor. We are requesting a minimum of 144 square feet for recyclable materials, and we did receive a recommendation from solid waste of approval for that request. We also are amending deviation 8. Originally, this was approved for between the north CPD and the ALF for reduced buffers, and what we're seeking relief for is to allow no buffers within our project adjacent to internal rights of ways. I did want to just show what that's referring to. Is this darker line represents a right of way, and we did not want to buffer within basically, which is the internal parking lot. That's
So that would mean no trees or bushes or anything there?
Well, we'll have general landscaping requirements, but it's more like a parking lot than a street within a multifamily development. Of course, there will be internal landscaping and general trees and, appropriate with the code, but we didn't want a required buffer since it's internal to the site.
So do you need the deviation at all?
Well, yes, because of the fact that right-of-ways, the mixed-use overlay requires buffers in only 2 instances, if you're abutting single-family or if you're abutting a right-of-way. And because of that, it only requires 5-foot right-of-way buffer, but just to allow flexibility of where we put our landscaping, we wanted to include that with the request, as well as we have back-out parking, which is the next new deviation that is going to be along that right-of-way as well. So we just want some flexibility with where the landscaping goes. We believe that the intent of that is for a site on the perimeter abutting right-of-way to provide those buffers, but internal to the site, we did not feel it was appropriate. We are including 2 new deviations with the request. A deviation 9 is to allow back-out parking within the internal right-of-way. Staff does recommend approval for this, and it is internal to the site and functions more like parking lot aisles, and we feel it's appropriate for the mixed-use overlay as well. Deviation 10 is for minimum building separation. This is to allow, instead of half the sum of the building heights, to allow 20 feet building separation within the site. Again, we feel that's appropriate for the mixed-use overlay and urban development regulations.
And the fire district was fine with that? Because these are going to be 5-6-story buildings, right?
I don't believe they're,
60 feet.
yeah. So, but that will be reviewed during the time of development order. We do believe that the existing and proposed deviations enhance the achievements of the plan development and continue to protect the public health, safety, and welfare.
Is the building separation something that could be requested as an administrative deviation at the time of development order?
We have done those before in the past.
Because I feel like that's premature at this stage, really.
I think it's, especially in this instance with, if we could include maybe a condition that a letter be provided, because I would hate to take it out with the contract purchase situation. It's not the property owner. I would just hate to have more uncertainty on the table, since the site does utilize this deviation. With that, I am going to turn this over to Christian Casey with Atwell. With the submittal document of this morning, I did include a copy of Christian's resume. He has not previously testified here, but we do request that he be accepted as an expert with the Land Development Code, LEAP Plan, in regarding environmental issues. Yes.
All right, Christian, were you sworn in?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, since you haven't been qualified as an expert here before, what I need you to do is give us a brief overview of your education background and also your work background, and then finally, your experience working with the LEAP Plan and Land Development Code specifically. And then once we go through that, we can qualify you as an expert, and then you're good to go going forward.
Sure.
It is the resumes are the last pages of the packet I gave you, just for reference if you need it.
Christian Casey, right?
Yes, ma'am.
You go by Chris?
Christian.
Okay. Okay, why don't you begin with your educational background, then to your work experience, and then specifically how many projects you've worked within Lee County on the Land Development Code and the Lee Plan.
Sure. So I graduated from FGCU with a degree in civil engineering and biology with a concentration in environmental and ecology. I've worked at Atwell, previously Dex Bender. I'm going on 5 years now. I am an ecologist with them. I have worked on projects in Lee County, working on indigenous plans, doing everything from protected species assessments, ERP modification, and permitting. Let's see what else. I'm also qualified with FWC for different tortoise removal processes, eagle monitoring with City of Cape Coral. I'm on the Fort Myers Environmental Advisory Board. I'm trying to just think of different projects in the area as far as, do you want names of the projects or locations?
How many years have you worked since graduation in this field?
In environmental, 5 years.
All right, you may proceed.
Okay, thank you. All right. The property primarily consists of uplands. During our surveys, we did not find any wetlands on site. An updated protected species survey was conducted back in August of 2022. During those surveys, no listed species from either FWS or FWC were found on site. As far as the environmental goals and objectives of the LEAP Plan, this project with the indigenous preserves, if there are any tortoises or anything like that on site that we find in the future, we will move those with FWC. So they do meet all the requirements of FWC, LEAP Plan, all of those. As far as environmental, that's my slide.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Sam Marshall's also here on surface water management, and we did submit an updated resume since Banks Engineering has merged with Atwell now.
Sam has been recognized as an expert in this forum before. You will continue to be recognized as such in the area of civil engineering. and you're going to review the stormwater management for the site?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I look forward
Thank
to
you.
that.
And thank you for covering the first part of my introduction for me. That was appreciated. Good morning. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about has already been covered. And Stacy, I don't know if I can get back to the, I'll go through the points here and then I'll go back to the site plan.
Okay.
So as Stacy mentioned, this site has existing permits. It does have an existing DO, which means de facto it's got an existing South Florida Water Management District permit. That permit is good through, I think, the end of 2026. Yes, ma'am. All right. We will be modifying the South Florida permit to match the new site plan if approved. As noted on the slide, issuance of the ERP ensures that surface and groundwater quality won't be adversely impacted. And I can cover that in a little bit more detail too. The proposed plan does remove development from the FEMA floodway. The existing permits have development and fill basically right up to the canal. We've pulled that back, as Stacy mentioned earlier too, with our increased setbacks. We've pulled it back from the floodway. That's no fill at all in the floodway. Additionally, just some points for the new site plan and the new proposed water management plan. There's going to be no reduction to the stormwater storage. You can see there's a large pond to the east, northeast. We're going to continue to propose and utilize that. There's going to be no significant changes to the stormwater discharge. It will not be increased. We're proposing basically the same stormwater discharge that exists today in the.
So will this large lake support all the development of the commercial parcels on Diplomat Parkway too? Is it designed to do that, or
It will
not connected?
It will support, yes, it will support them. It will support volumetrically, and I'm talking specifically about parcels 1 and 2. It's going to be the outfall for all of the commercial parcels along Diplomat Parkway. As part of the water management permit is going to provide volumetric and some water treatment for parcels 1 and 2. The other parcel, parcel 3, is shown on that plan, will be responsible to do its own pre-treatment water quality, and it will, de facto, it'll have some detention on its site, but we will provide the outfalls. We're going to provide stubs for that parcel to connect into that'll route through. And we don't know what's exactly proposed on those parcels, but we are going to provide a route through consistent with the existing permit.
Okay, so walk me through how this works. The water's going to hit the impervious areas. It's going to be channeled to dry detention. Show me where that is, and then outfall into this lake.
Right. So for the proposed multifamily, there's no dry detention proposed. So the commercial parcels will provide dry detention and pre-treatment, and that will flow. We've got structures that are here and for this road, and they will basically be channeled through pipes to the lake. And so everything in here, everything in the development area is going to be channeled to the lake.
And that's like curb and gutter there?
Yes, curb and gutter pipes, correct, inlets.
All right, so now the lake rises up, and
Correct.
where does it outfall?
So the lake, there is one pipe that will come from the corner of the lake to the south edge of the parcel. It could really be anywhere on the parcel, but we've got it proposed on the south edge of the parcel and goes all the way through here and basically ties into the ditch on the west side. And that
And
ditch,
that'll be a pipe?
yes, that's correct. And that ditch flows north to south, exists today. And again, the existing permit proposes fill and allows fill up to basically this line right here. Our current plan, as you can see, this is the floodway line that Stacy referenced, and we're set back even further from that floodway line. So we're increasing the setback. It'll increase, I mean, you do get some storage out of that in the floodway, which is good. It also allows more of a flow cross section, so it'll help improve flow along there as well. So it's going to be an improved system over what's permitted today.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Also, no decrease in water quality as well. We do have to go through permitting. Permitting has changed a little bit with South Florida, so there are probably some nutrient removal calculations that we're going to do that will probably, we may incorporate swales, or we may incorporate exfiltration trenches, things like that. I don't know yet. We haven't gotten that far into design. So I suspect in the permit modification process, we're going to have a couple of additional water quality nutrient removal features on the site. The lake itself is a large part of that. With the depth of the lake, it does allow a lot of nutrient removal to occur. But we may end up incorporating small swales. I don't want to say we're not. I don't know yet. We haven't gotten that far in design. One important thing.
That'll come into play during the permit mod?
Yes, it will, yeah. And the older permits, there was not as much of a focus on nitrate and phosphate removal. There's the last several, and this permit goes back a ways, I think it was, I think 2000 and, before 2010. That was not as much of a focus back then. It was presumed that if you built the lakes, it would treat. Now it's more of a, let's quantify it and make sure we're doing it. So there's a little bit more calculation involved now. One important thing that we're going to continue to do with the site, and I know we've got some neighbors here today, we had a chat beforehand. There's an existing swale along the north edge that conveys water from the north, allows it to convey to the ditch. That swale is going to remain. We're proposing that it stays in. It's going to be outside of our drainage system, again, kind of under being good neighbors. It's in the permit today to be outside of the drainage system and to allow flow to hit the swale and go to the drainage ditch. It will be preserved in the proposed system, so that will not be taken away.
So you're not utilizing that part as part of your plan?
No. And correct, our drainage is not flowing to it. It's just going to allow drainage from the north to continue to flow to
They'll
it.
see no impacts. They can drain to that swale as they have in the past. As long as they maintain it, everything will continue to work as it has.
That's correct. That's correct. So we are going to maintain that swale, and its purpose will be maintained, and they'll get to continue to drain to the south. So we're preserving existing.
It's on your property, so you'll be maintaining it.
It is, and there's a drainage easement there as well. And I don't have a copy of the easement in front of me. I don't know who it's dedicated to, but again, the purpose of it is to collect water from the north, to continue to collect water from the north and to allow it to flow as it does today to the west to the ditch. We're not going to control it. Whatever water management system they have, whatever rate they flow to it, that's really up to them with their permit, but the ditch will remain on our property.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Question?
I have a question. For the
Sure.
record, Beth Workman. The drainage easement that you talk about, do you know how wide, because we have a condition about the enhanced buffer up there. And I just asked this because it's not shown on the MCP,
Right, I've got
the
a
width
very,
of it. It's not something to grow on because I think it's an F buffer, which is 30 feet wide.
right. And I think the ditch, I'm sure it can still serve as part of that
Okay,
buffer. I know we'll keep the planting zone out of the buffer. We'll be conscious of where the vegetation's planted so that we don't block the flow in the ditch.
okay.
Um,
I just don't want to condition an enhancement if we're not able to enhance because it's 30 feet wide.
Right,
Isn't it customary to show the buffer on the master concept plan?
The easement.
The
Yes.
easement only, not the plan buffer?
Yes, but if it's a 30-foot type F buffer enhancement per the condition that we have in the zoning, and it's a 30-foot wide drainage easement, we have a code section that you can't deviate or vary from that says you can't plant any required plants in any easement.
So that enhanced buffer would have to be outside that easement?
At least half of it, yeah.
I'm going back to, shouldn't that be shown on the master?
The easement
concept plan?
should, yes.
If I may, earlier, we were discussing, right now, there's the 20-foot drainage easement, and then we're showing the 30-foot buffer
Okay,
south of that.
okay.
So there's 50 feet total.
So we don't want plants, if you want it to convey, you don't want to put plants within that drainage, even though you're maintaining it on site, the owner is. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear
Thank
for
you.
the enhancement.
Stacy, your testimony is that the master concept plan does show the 30-foot in?
It has the
Buffer?
30-foot buffer.
here.
What I'm concerned about is the easement width. It says a type F buffer, I got that, it's 30 feet. But what is the easement in there that's remaining, the ditch is remaining to serve the people to the north?
Well, it looks like there's a hash mark, perhaps depicting the,
Okay, just
Drainage.
as long as we're aware of that and that, we can plant outside of it and still get that
Right.
enhancement.
Yep.
Otherwise, we have a condition that doesn't do anything.
Thank you, Beth. Appreciate you.
That's all I have.
Thank you.
anything else, Sam?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. And so this master concept plan replaces all the other ones, and the date of it's going to be June 25th, correct? Ted, good morning.
Good morning. Ted Shreesh with TR Transportation Consultants. We conducted the traffic analysis as part of this application. The changes, again, as Stacy indicated, in terms of traffic, relate just simply to the north side, and it's a reduction in terms of traffic because we're eliminating the 50,000 square feet of retail uses. So it results in an 85% reduction in the PM peak hour trip generation for the overall project. We're reducing the request from the 238 multifamily and the 50,000 square feet on the north parcel and requesting the 360 multifamily units, again, along the north parcel. Our staff's request, because it's all one project, we did look and include the uses from the south parcel, so the traffic study does analyze the entire project. Our analysis indicated that the surrounding roadways will operate at an acceptable level of service at the projected build-out. Diplomat Parkway is a City of Cape Coral roadway, so permitting for access will be through the City of Cape Coral at the time of permitting. As included in the staff report,
There's a condition in there about potential participation in an intersection improvement. Is that pertain to the US 41 intersection?
yes.
What's the status of that? Did it already occur?
What was that? That was with the original.
Yes, because it was a county road. This is what it said. This is what we're doing.
I'm just wondering how we're going to enforce that now. If it's a city road and a state highway, I'm not sure where the county gets a seat at the table anymore with regard to that condition. Is there any independent agreement with the city of Cape Coral?
Stacy Hewitt, for the record, applicant did propose to strike it because of that reason, and there was some hesitation, so we revised the language to say if required by the City of Cape Coral or the Florida Department of Transportation.
Right, we added the word if requested by the Florida Department of Transportation or the City of Cape Coral in the language that's proposed. Because you're correct, there's no permitting actually through access through Lee County.
I'm just wondering, is this intended to be a permitting bar within the county if they fail to participate in this agreement? And how would we know? I'm adverse to keeping conditions that we're not able to enforce, so let me think on that. Thank you
Thank you.
for the clarification.
And
They
this
took
last
over the
comment
whole,
that-
they took over the whole road, even the part that is bordered by Lee County.
Yes,
Yeah.
all the way up to the 41 intersection. And the last comment that from a transportation perspective, we're consistent with the Lee plan and the land development code.
And that intersection functions fine, not signalized?
Well, there are issues with the intersection. The Florida Department of Transportation has studied it because of the location of the signal at Merchants Crossing further to the south, the signal spacing is too close. So FDOT has looked at it for a number of years. There have been a number of different studies of
Seems like
how.
they should relocate it to
Yes.
Diplomat and then funnel the multifamily and Merchants Crossing out to Diplomat to go.
There have been studies and discussions about that, but FDOT has yet to do anything about it at this point.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
For the record, Stacy Hewitt. The request does meet the findings and review criteria of the Land Development Code. The project does comply with the Lee Plan as outlined in the staff report and the attachments. It's consistent with policy 1.1.3 for central urban, objectives 2.1, policy 2.1.1 on development location, objective 2.2, policy 2.2.1 on development timing. It also is consistent with goal 5 and objective 5.1, policies 5.1.2, 5.1.3, 5.1.5, 5.1.6, and 5.1.7 on residential uses. There's no development or fill within the floodway. It is near employment, shopping centers, parks, schools, mass transit, and bicycle facilities, and provides on-site open space and recreation area, and it does remain compatible with the surrounding properties. The existing commercial uses continue to be consistent with Goal 6 and the commercial policies. It's also consistent with the mixed-use overlay policies, objectives 11.1 and 11.2, policies 11.2.2, 11.2.5, and 11.2.7. It is appropriate for mixed-use development where existing infrastructure exists. There's connections with the commercial parcels, and the requested revisions provide an appropriate urban form and utilize non-residential area for density. It's also consistent with North Fort Myers Goal 30, Policy 30.1.3. It is infill, compact, mixed-use development with residential adjacent to commercial, where uses have been approved for development since 2006. It's consistent with the Water Quality Goal 125, Objective 125.1, Policies 125.1.1 and 125.1.3. As testified, there's existing South Florida and development order approvals, and the issuance of the ERP will ensure that surface and groundwater quality won't be adversely impacted. Also consistent with Goal 135, Objective 135.1, Policy 135.1.9, meeting housing needs. It does provide for the alternate of either townhouse or multifamily development at an appropriate density to assist with meeting the housing needs of the county. And it's also consistent with Goal 158, mixed-use infill development, assisting with diversified and stable economy by providing employment and opportunities for the county as well on the commercial parcels. The request does meet the code and other applicable regulations or qualifies for deviations. We did hold the public information meeting within the North Fort Myers community planning area, but no one attended. And we also, that's part of the staff report as well, and it does qualify for the existing, revised, and proposed deviations. It is compatible with existing and planned uses in the surrounding area, and will provide access sufficient to support the proposed development intensity. Again, the request results in a reduction of trips. The expected impacts on transportation facilities will be addressed by existing county regulations and conditions of approval. We must get permitting with the appropriate authorities, and the applicant and staff do agree that the request will not have a detrimental impact on the roadway network in the area. It will not adversely affect environmentally critical or sensitive areas and natural resources. Again, we are providing additional indigenous preservation above the requirements. And it's also served by urban services. It's within a future urban area with adequate urban services previously outlined. The proposed mix of use is appropriate at the proposed location, and the conditions provide sufficient safeguards to the public interest and are reasonably related to the impacts of the request. And the deviations do enhance the achievements of the objectives of the plan development and protect the public health, safety, and welfare. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay, I have a question.
Of course.
The request is for 360 units.
Correct.
Your master concept plan shows way more detail than I think is required by the code, which is fine. You're showing 36 buildings. That's 10 units per building. And you're asking for 60 feet.
I think you're looking at the existing master concept
This is the
plan
existing,
from 2007. The overall.
looking at the wrong page.
Page 2 is now.
I see.
Yes.
So 13 buildings? All right, now it's making more sense. All right, and can we just talk about your stabilized emergency access? That's part of the request. It was tied to a deviation, was it?
Yes, it's tied to
Existing
one of the
deviation?
existing deviations and is proposed to remain. Let me see which one that was.
So the plan is for that emergency access to align with the access to the south,
That's correct.
but it won't really appear to be an entrance or an exit, you know. It'll just be stabilized and usable for that purpose, right? Is it gonna be gated? What's it gonna look like in terms of access by emergency vehicles?
I'll ask Sam to
Thanks.
address that. Thank you.
We're still working on the engineering design, but preliminarily, we're proposing a gate at the roundabout on the east end where it connects in. So where our pavement begins, we're proposing a gate there. Obviously, the fire department would have either their
Universal
clicker,
access.
yeah, or if there's any lock, they'd have a key to the lock, it'd be their lock. So we're proposing that the fire department is the only persons to have access right now.
Okay,
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna take a 10-minute break, and then when we come back, we will begin with applicant's presentation. Thank you. I need to Good morning. We're back on the record. We're going to start with staff's presentation, then we will have public, and when we come back to the parties, I'd like to walk through the conditions together. Thank you. Staff's PowerPoint will be Staff Exhibit 2. Thank you. I'm ready to begin.
Good morning. For the record, Dirk Danley, Principal Planner in the Lee County Zoning Section. I have previously been accepted as an expert witness in the Lee County Land Development Code and Lead Plan. I would like to do so again today. Before we get started, I did want to discuss some of the things that were discussed with the applicant, just to provide additional clarification from staff. The first of which is just the discussion about that CPD versus RPD. It's in staff's opinion, the function of the land will be the same if it's the hearing examiner's preference. Reverting that property back to RPD wouldn't change the function of the property, and we would be in support of that moving forward. And we can provide you whatever additional information you need to help make that clarification on your end. That said, the legal description that was provided with the staff report is a fully functioning legal description, assuming that that RPD or that CPD portion reverts back to RPD. Because there was some murkiness in the Z11 case that there was a legal description for the CPD. It was mapped in our system. It functioned in the conditions as a CPD because it had commercial uses, but the approved resolution didn't have it mapped in their legal description.
It's complicated, though, because you've got the existing development order, right, that leaves that part out, correct?
I don't recall. I don't think it does. I think it includes it.
It includes it?
Right, because it's gone through a handful of administrative approvals since then.
I'm trying to clean it up because
Correct.
I feel like there's a lot of loose strings here.
Yeah, I think you would find that the applicant and staff both agree with that. So anything that we can do to help move that process into a cleaner.
My only concern at this point is we have a property owner and a contract purchaser. So I'm not sure the property owner, if the sale doesn't go through, how are they going to feel about that reverting to RPD?
My understanding is that the CPD right now has residential uses on it in the DO.
Okay,
And
thank
so
you.
moving forward, I don't think that there would be a particular issue with the applicant reverting that piece back to residential.
Stacy Hewitt for the record, it just came to me that the existing DOs for townhomes, and I believe the Land Development Code only allows multifamily. Does that include townhomes in a commercial plan development?
The definition of a townhome gets a little murky with multifamily depending on ownership and how the lots and everything's chopped up. So it may be functioning as a townhome product, but still be consistent with the multifamily anyway.
My concern is just, I didn't think of that until now, that if the old DO ends up happening, is there a problem with that remaining CPD because it's townhomes, and I believe they're fee simple?
I don't believe so, but that being said, it probably adds more fuel to the potential of just
The
reverting it back
RPD.
to RPD on that end.
I think it's cleaner if it's an RPD. And it's very simple. I mean, we're not changing the overall development entitlements per se than what was
Correct.
contemplated in this DO. It's
Correct.
not like it contemplated commercial and now we're foreclosing that. It
Correct.
was not planned for that.
Correct.
Potentially in conflict with the code, it's murky. I guess we got to figure out what we're going to do with townhomes somewhere along the line, but, all right, let's proceed.
Okay, so just wanted to add in, like I said, I think the legal that we have today would assume residential plan development for that whole tract, including the north RPD and CPD.
That affect the master concept plan?
The way it's designed right now, I don't believe so, no. That said, I wanted to add to, there's a discussion on the deviation for the building separation, the 20 feet or half the height, whatever is greater. The property is in the mixed-use overlay. Conventional districts that allow for multifamily uses, including the RM districts and the like C1, C2 districts, would allow for height with no required building separation. It would just defer back to the building code. The applicant's request is basically to allow additional flexibility to facilitate the same type of development that a conventional district would allow in the mixed-use overlay. And that's why staff did recommend approval, and we didn't even require the additional fire letter, because that wouldn't have been required in a conventional district.
Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, and just wanted to add one more little detail, and we'll go through the conditions later, as I understand. There was, as we've stated, some murkiness in the zoning history. In that Z11 case, there was property development regulations that weren't pulled forward from an ADD, previous to that, ADD 2007. And so in the applicant's conditions that they provided you, those are corrected. And as our understanding is that kind of the mosaic of changes that the applicants provided you, plus the clean version, does correctly reflect all the changes from the beginning of this.
All right, so you fly-specced it and confirmed that
Correct.
everything's pulled in?
Correct.
And the color-coded version is the guide to what came from where. Thank you, this must have been a yeoman's task. And I knew something was amiss when I started to prepare the development history of this for my own understanding. And I could see there was some incongruities, and that's inevitable when you've got a project approved so long ago. It's undergone a lot of changes. So thank you. I appreciate you looking further into that. And now this codified resolution will be very useful to everyone, and we can rely on it going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So all of that said, there'll be some things in this presentation that refer to that North CPD. We're just going to pretend or assume moving forward that that will be an RPD at the end of all of this. But just want to make sure that was all on the record before we got going. There is a request, as the applicant stated, to allow that 360 multifamily dwellings on that northern tract, both in the RPD and that northern CPD tract. Overall, there's still a residential development residential development density considered for the southern RPD, and the applicant seeks to retain the commercial intensity for the entire project.
All right, so this is an amendment to the overall RPD CPD with a focus on this 35-acre parcel to the north.
Yes.
But this resolution is going to continue to apply to the entire project.
Correct. I wanted to put a little bit on the record too. We've clarified, or we've confirmed, the construction that you saw during your site visit was specific to the Merchants Crossing CPD. The RPD to the south does not have, my understanding, it doesn't have any active construction on it at this time.
Okay, so what I saw then was not, boy, I could have sworn there was construction there, but okay. I probably came down that road and I was looking at,
That's our understanding
Yeah.
as it is today. But so moving forward, there will be 1, 2, this CPD tract and this CPD tract as well.
so it continues to be 4 commercial
Correct.
parcels fronting on either Diplomat or 41, or both.
Correct. And then there's two separate and distinct RPDs. RPD 1, which is what the applicant's working with, and then RPD 2 to the south. The property is in the mixed-use overlay, as the applicant stated. The approach that we took with the conditions was to incorporate those changes in the mixed-use overlay into the resolution. It is in the central urban future land use category, and it is in the North Fort Myers community plan area. Did you have questions?
So this property to the east, the RPD to the east, is a recent
Right.
rezoning,
Mhm.
I recall, and that is also for multifamily development, am I right?
Correct. Correct. I believe the acronym is MEVO. And yes, it was within the past couple of years it's been approved. So the applicant's gone through this, but just to re-articulate, this is the approved MCP, and alternate 1 and alternate 2 are for the north and the south pieces of the property. I won't belabor the point because we've gone through it. Just to kind of superimpose the project onto the aerial, this is what the proposed development plan generally looks like, just to conceptualize it a little bit. The applicant's gone through the separation. It's not quite straight lined here, but there is going to be a notable separation between the 60-foot tall buildings proposed and the residential uses to the north, and the same goes for the residential uses to the west. We've been talking about that history at length. Our applicant and staff are of the opinion that the proposed conditions provided by the applicant do reflect all the changes from the past and moving forward with the amendment today. We've gone through the decision-making criteria. We'll go through those a little bit more as we discuss the LEAP plan, but we do find that this request overall is meeting those criteria. We talked about the property being in the central urban future land use category. Commercial, light industrial, and residential uses are all considered for this category. No industrial uses are considered at this time, but the residential uses here and here, along with the commercial uses along Diplomat and 41, are both consistent with the category. Although this amendment is really focused on here, as we've been discussing, the whole PD has to function at the end of this amendment. So we do find that it is consistent with this policy. This is in an urban area. This is in an urban area, and we do find that it meets the requirements of objectives 2.1 and 2.2. We do find it's consistent with goal 5, as the applicant stated. The property development regulations are characteristics of the mixed-use overlay, and there are residential uses to the north and west, but with the additional separations just by site design, we do find that they're consistent with policy 5.1.5. Although commercial uses weren't really discussed as part of this application, there are functioning commercial uses within the plan development overall, and we do find them to be consistent with those criteria still. The applicant did discuss the water quality, the surface water management plan for the property. We do find that they're consistent with goal 125. Goal 135 is there to ensure a mix of housing within the area. The multifamily uses that we discussed both with MEVO to the east and then what's being proposed by the applicant here on this property do introduce additional multifamily in the area where it's predominantly single family and mobile home community. And that's with also the multifamily use within Merchants Crossing. And then just moving forward, the PD globally does help expand a healthy business climate within Lee County and in this area. There was a public information meeting. They did meet those requirements within the staff report. We did talk about the deviations. Deviations 7 and 8 were amended just to include the proposed development plan. The applicant did discuss that at length in their presentation. And we are recommending approval of deviation 9 and 10. We did talk about the building separation, and we're here with any questions that you may have about that.
Yeah, I'm requesting a Word copy of the clean set of conditions and deviations, if you don't mind. That'll help me in preparing my recommendation. If you can send that to me post-hearing.
Of course.
Thanks.
And with that, we do recommend approval. We do find that this case does meet the criteria for rezonings and for amendments to plan developments. I'm here with any questions you may have.
Well, I just want to make an observation. I think that this land being designated in the mixed-use overlay and it being adjacent to these two mobile home communities, I had a concern regarding not so much residential against residential, but we're talking about a marked increase in intensity on this site versus its two adjacent sites. But between the floodway protection area and this enhanced 30-foot buffer outside the drainage way on the north side, I think that sufficient transition has been established between the intensity of the mixed-use overlay and the adjacent development pattern. Would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. All right, now I'm going to open up the floor to members of the public that wish to put remarks on the record. Okay, I've got 2 on 1. Oh, no, here we go. Brandon George.
I'm Ryan Vadalero. I should be on the first one. You're
Ryan Vadalero, okay. I'm going to cross out Brandon since he's got his own.
Yes.
Good morning, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. My name is Ryan Vadalero. That's Vatalaro. I'm with Atlas Law, and we represent the property owner to the north, the manufactured home community. It's called Serendipity, and it's owned and operated by a company called Sun Communities. Brandon George from Sun Communities is here as well. There are a lot of questions we had about the development, so we appreciate the opportunity to attend this. A lot of them were answered in the presentation, but we had a couple things that we wanted the hearing examiner and the applicant to consider as well. First and foremost, we do not contest that the public comment and hearing was held as required, but I think there was no direct communication thus far between the property owners and the applicant and northern property owners. So I think going forward, we would like to improve that. And I think talking to the applicant and their staff, we have opened the lines of communication and hope to keep them open. The first concern that we had was drainage, as did the hearing examiner, and a lot of that was addressed very well by Sam. I think I can say personally that I represent a lot of communities, and more it seems that they've been having problems with flooding. Some homes have been condemned in mobile home parks because the flooding issues have been so bad, and obviously Lee County knows that better than almost any other jurisdiction, the issues with flooding and stormwater. We think, just based on the testimony, that it appears that the retention pond that is proposed will hopefully address that. I was maybe confused from my own understanding, but I wasn't sure if the commercial parcels abutting Diplomat, and I think they may have been referred to as CPD 1, 2, and 3. I was confused as to whether or not those parcels, which are now vacant, are being counted into the allotment for the drainage, or
1 and 2 only. Parcel 3, his testimony was that they'll be responsible for their own dry retention and lakes.
So one concern that we may have is if CPD 1 and 2 are developed or they're used for some other purpose, that whether or not there's going to be adequate drainage on those, or if that needs to be included. And I will defer to the expert on whether, if those are developed, if that will affect the drainage in any way as per the current drainage plan. But that was just one of the questions that the property owner to the north had. I believe, if I understood correctly, with regard to the drainage swale to the north, that there were no planned landscaping in the drainage swale, but that there would be plantings within the 30-foot buffer, which is good. One of the other main concerns of the mobile home park to the north is privacy. We think that the trees will help, but as far as a physical barrier preventing the movement of noise as well as individuals, that's something that we would ask to be considered. It would be the mobile home park's preference that some sort of physical barrier, a fence, wall, vinyl fence be used on that border. And if we look at AG2 right now, that's a storage area for RVs and other type of utility items, depending on how the landscaping is cleared around there, it may even be unsightly for the people that are in this residential development. And there's a 30-foot buffer behind the new residences, the apartment buildings that are being planned, but there's only about a 10-foot buffer between the neighboring property and the retention pond. So some of our concerns are, even people moving from the mobile home park to the retention pond to fish, to do whatever, or vice versa, the flow of people or sound going in the other direction. And I think the hearing examiner mentioned it, there's an increase in intensity between, the developments in the two mobile home parks in this, effectively a apartment complex, and they're both residential, but markedly different uses. So we are of the opinion that a physical barrier or fence may alleviate or, propose some sort of line of demarcation between, these 60-foot potentially apartment buildings and, two mobile home parks with one-story residences throughout that are kind of closely packed together. And, depending on how the trees look, and obviously there's, hedgerows that are planned, but we believe that some sort of fencing would be more beneficial. Also, I know that Serendipity to the north is a senior living community, 55 plus. I'm not sure about the mobile home park to the west, although I will say that demographically it's going to be older individuals. That's another big difference between the character of these two uses. Just generally speaking, the individuals who live in multifamily apartments trend younger than obviously the individuals that live in the 55 plus community to the north. So we appreciate the buffer area that's being provided. We agree with the opinion of the hearing examiner that buffer should be incorporated somewhere in the, whether it's the ordinance approval or if it's in the deviations. We would just like that in writing in the event that, the developer changes their mind or what have you. We want that to be guaranteed that, there's going to be that buffer between these two markedly different residential uses. And the other questions that we had have already been answered by the staff as well as the applicant. So we appreciate that. And with that, I would cede my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Brandon George? Good morning, thank you for coming.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Ryan did a great job, communicating our concerns here. Obviously, just want to reiterate the 55-plus nature. I'm 99% sure that the golf course community that's to the west is 55-plus as well, and the concerns, obviously, for our 338 home sites that are on the north side, that this have the least amount of impact to them as possible, and obviously their safety and security are paramount, and I'm sure this will be a beautiful development when it's done, but we want to make sure that there is a buffer that is secured. So no other comments other than that.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else from the public that's present that would like to put remarks on the record? I will close public input and come back to staff and the applicant. Do you want to clarify any points that were raised during the public input? Perhaps explain what a type B buffer looks like, the composition of the buffer.
Right, yes, the 30-foot type F buffer has 10.
Is it F or B?
Is an F on the west side, and let me get the conditions. And if I may, one of the concerns that I have with providing fencing would be any barriers to maintenance for the flood, the floodway and the ditches on the property. I don't know if you have anything to add to that. is
Well,
in
I know
regards to.
typically, sure.
Well, look at the buffer.
I mean, I know typically if you're gonna provide any kind of a fence or a wall, the vegetation's gonna be outside of it. That may force it to be more into the ditch. I don't know. Again, we have to look at the cross-section, look at the buffer. But I mean, you can do gates and everything for maintenance, but it's certainly easier if you don't. So we haven't looked that far into it, but I know again, you're gonna put your vegetation on the outside of a fence, so I don't know where the fence would exactly be placed. And it might,
Stacy, can you show me on the map here how far the F buffer will go and then the B buffer?
Yes, and just for clarification also, the mixed-use overlay doesn't require buffers unless it's adjacent to single-family lots or adjacent to a right-of-way.
Right, I'm
So,
aware.
right now, there's no buffer allowed to the north.
There's no required.
Correct, but we've carried forward the enhanced buffer, but the type F buffer will go over as far as the residential development is. There's the 20-foot drainage ditch, then a 30-foot enhanced buffer that is on the master concept plan and is also included in condition 23B that states an enhanced type F buffer must be provided along the north line west of the lake as shown on the master concept plan. This buffer must be 30 feet in width and include 10 native canopy trees per 100 linear feet and a double hedgerow planted at 48 inches in height at the time of planting.
And then that drops down to what? Along the lake?
That drops down to a 10-foot buffer with, and I believe that, let me pull the master concept.
What makes it an enhanced F buffer? Are you doing more than an F buffer requires?
Yes, there should be additional plantings within that.
Okay. And what is the buffer standard along the lake line?
It's a 10-foot buffer with type B plantings, which I believe is 5 trees per 100 linear feet, and a hedgerow. I apologize, I don't have that in front of me, but let me pull that up just to make sure we are clear on the record for what's proposed there. Do you recall, Derek, a type B buffer's requirements?
I don't require that off the top of my head.
Okay. Bear with me one moment.
The enhanced type F buffer, just to read it into the record, is 30 feet with 10 native canopy trees per 100 linear feet, a double hedgerow planted 48 feet at time, or 48 inches at time of planting.
And then maintained at 60?
That's my understanding, yes.
And that's more than what a typical F requires?
I can pull that up.
Well, good, then you can pull up the B while you're at it.
Of course.
Yes, that's an anomaly in the land development code that they don't require buffer along the perimeter of the mixed-use overlay, since there is usually a distinct drop down in intensity outside the overlay.
Yes, a 10-foot buffer. A type B is a double staggered hedge and 5 trees per 100 linear feet, which is what I had thought, so.
And the B is 36 inches on planting for the hedge, maintained at 48.
Let's see, yes, 36 inches, and the type F buffers are 48 inches at time of planting.
And then maintained at 60 for F, but maintained at 48 for the B.
Correct.
All right, anything else? Okay, we're gonna leave the record open. For a Word version.
I believe there was a question about drainage. Did we properly answer the drainage question?
Oh, no, why don't we have Sam get up and go through that again?
Right.
Because I think he misunderstood about the parcels
okay.
1 and 2.
Sure. So parcels 1 and 2, in our drainage calculations, we are presuming a pretty high amount of impervious for parcels 1 and 2. So we're going to ensure that when those do develop out, that the lake that's proposed on this property has the capacity to treat their water volumetrically and from a water quality standpoint.
So it's only parcel 3 that's on its own in terms of
They,
water management system.
yes, parcel 3, but they will outflow through us. So we're basically allowing for their flow to flow through. We're giving them an outfall. It was part of the original older permitting effort was to give them a path for their water to get to the ditch. So we are providing a stub, a physical stub, a pipe or a box for that parcel to tie into. But we don't know what they're proposing for design. We don't know they're impervious, but they'll be on their own for
Would
getting
you
their permits.
agree that accommodating the floodway will also be an enhancement to the flow of water to the properties to the north?
Without a doubt, yes. It will absolutely be an enhancement to everybody to the north, yes.
Increasing storage capacity and flow?
Yes, it will increase both storage capacity and flow ability. I won't say it'll solve drainage problems, but it certainly will not exacerbate any, and it should incrementally help any solution, yes.
Has to be an improvement over the prior plan that showed obstructions within it.
It's significantly wider, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
The only, Stacy Hewitt for the record, additionally, we're required as part of the conditions, to remove the exotics from the floodway, which should help as well we're gonna maintain the native vegetation within it, but exotics will be removed.
So if that's all we have for testimony in the record, I'd just like to go through the conditions real quick. The only language that will be in the recommendation is language shown in red underscore. Is that correct?
That is correct. The only changes, you mean as far as, the red is what's proposed as revisions the strike-throughs were not in red, but the proposed language is in red and underlined. Right.
So then we get to the schedule of uses. And green is proposed for addition.
Green is, if you look at the top of the page, each page has kind of a codification of where that language came from.
Okay, I see. Okay, so we're including property development regulations for townhouse, even though this product is probably going to be multi-family.
These were maintained because of that existing development order and the other master concept plan. And on page 8 and 9, that is where this for the South RPD, and that was the clarification that had been done in the ADD 2007-00169, but was lost in the ZIA 11-002. So we are proposing to put that back in consistent.
Okay. So the RPD north of Diplomat Parkway, I'm on page 11 now, that is what is Diplomat House. But this project is not now Diplomat house. It's the Diplomat RPD CPD that's going to continue forward.
Correct.
Okay.
And that additional language about the North CPD was just added to make sure that it's clear we're including that property.
Yeah. Okay, concurrency condition will probably come out. That's covered by the Land Development Code already. The no agricultural uses approved, that's gonna come out. It's not on the list of permitted uses, and we don't have a condition allowing it to continue. Doesn't the code require all required buffers to have native vegetation now?
Sorry, can you ask that question again?
The LEAP plan, 126.21, I think, requires all required buffers to have native vegetation, I think. Isn't that also in the Land Development Code?
Mm-hmm.
So can we delete that condition?
We'll keep going, I'll confirm that. I thought
Okay.
it was 75%, but it might be.
That's what I'm looking to.
Oh, traffic condition can go out, that's covered by the Land Development Code. The LEAP plan condition can come out, that's covered by the Land Development Code. Accessory uses, that's also covered by the Land Development Code. This is an old, yeah. I will probably delete condition 19 and move that text to the very front, the condition 1.
Yes.
Okay, and then all the deviations. Old and new. Nine and 10 are new. Okay. When I go through and I put this all together and I check out all the moving pieces, if something's missing, I may make a request for a post-hearing submittal. Hopefully, we won't have to reopen the hearing on it. I just want to make sure we can get this as clean as possible. Dirk, I can leave that condition in. It's just that I thought that was already required by code.
Okay. I know that certain areas, just reading through the code now, certain areas do require 100%, but I believe that the code is 75%.
Okay, well then I'll leave that condition in. All right, very good.
If I can, just for right now, the overall RPD, CPD, I don't think it's like an attachment to the staff report per se. It's just attached to one of the zoning resolutions. If you'd want me to submit one for it's the same thing. I don't know if you need one submitted for the record for
What is it?
the legal description for the RPD, CPD.
Yes, I do need that.
Right. It's in the record, but I don't think it's by itself, so.
I don't believe so, no.
Excuse the hole punches.
That will be applicant exhibit 3. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, same engineering firm, that makes it easy. Is there anything further we need to consider this morning? Thank you, everyone, for clarifying what was not clear to me before. I appreciate the effort. It's going to take me a little while to get this recommendation out. The board's on break for the next month, so hopefully I can get it done so that you can be heard sometime in August. Probably not the first date, but maybe the second hearing in August.
Okay.
Right.
I do have one other question. Just to clarify, there was a lot of discussion of moving parts with the RPD, CPD situation and the master concept plan. And I just want to make sure if there is anything needed submitted. Just to make sure, because I can turn around any revisions, pretty darn quick. But the question the one question I'm having is the master concept plan, we amended it as part of the 48-hour notice to, I believe, to show that
There's a hash
CPD.
line.
It's just a line calling it out, but I just don't want,
I will clarify that in the recommendation and somewhere in the conditions.
okay,
If possible, otherwise, I mean.
you don't need it. I just wanted to make sure that we talked about it, because
Let
if,
me see how it all lays out.
okay.
It's,
Okay. That sounds good. And I even have, the flash drive has those Word documents if I can
okay.
get those.
And I don't anticipate there being an issue with this. It sounds like it's gonna create less impacts. I recognize that the offer of the buffer along the north boundary is more than code, and certainly on the west boundary, I don't really see that as a issue that's going to impact this in any way. And emergency access addresses any concern I might have with that deviation. So it's just going to take me time to get everything like in order. And I'm taking vacation next month.
Good for you.
So. Okay,
All
thank
right.
you.
Thank you very much.